Okay, so I've done CELTA. I've taught in TESOL for like 20 years. Can't believe it's been that long. I went all the way to PhD. I did a PhD in education, and I never expected to do that. My starting point actually was doing a certificate in English language teaching. So today I'm going to talk to you about my experience of doing that, and I want to kind of help you decide on whether doing that kind of qualification is actually worth the time and the money that you're going to spend on that. I'm going to do that in four ways. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about the skills that you can get from it and the pros and cons of that and whether it's worth it. I'm going to talk about the knowledge that you can get from this kind of course and what that really means for teaching. I'll talk about the experience of it. That's the experience of doing it and the experience you get from it. And finally, I'm also going to talk about the recognition that that kind of qualification will give you in the jobs market. And again, whether it's worth it or not. Let's start by thinking about the CELTA. So the first thing that I got from the CELTA when I started teaching was that it actually allowed me, it gave me the skill which was to know and to be able to plan a lesson. Now, that kind of seems like kind of basic, but that's the kind of thing that the certificate will give you. So the kind of basics of how to put a lesson together. And before I did the teaching kind of the certificate, like the CELTA, I had done like a little bit of teaching when I was traveling, and I'm sure my classes were absolutely they must have been like really bad. So doing a certificate really helped me to understand about how to put a lesson together. Like that, I needed a lead in, that I needed stages that I could use. I needed feedback and pair checks, that I needed to try and like recycle language, and how to kind of close down a lesson to help the students understand what you'd covered and what they'd learned that day. So those kind of aspects of it were really helpful. I started my practice as an English language teacher in South Korea, and that was like 20, just under 20 years ago now. It's like crazy. And when I went there, you actually didn't need to have a certificate, which I'll come back to later. I needed to have a degree, like an undergraduate degree, and also a passport. Yeah, so the passports that they were looking for at the time, which I don't know if it's still the same, were like a UK, a US, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, I think were the ones that they accepted. It's very much like native speaker driven, and there was no need for a teaching qualification. And when I went there, there were so many bad classes. Oh my God. And the reason I knew those classes were bad was because I had done a certificate myself. So that was really helpful for me. Out of all of the four skills, so reading, writing, speaking, listening, the writing classes that I saw taking place were actually like okay, because there was a decent textbook which teachers just kind of followed. Reading and listening classes required like a lot more kind of skills, which you can get on a CELTA or a certificate course, which were not present in a lot of people's practice. And the big one was speaking. If you want to run a good speaking class, you really need to know how to construct a lesson plan, or how to construct a class, just kind of, from start to end. Like thinking about things like teacher talk time. We have a really good video on that if you want to know more about it, and these kind of things. So when I went into that situation, I actually was able to come out as a really good teacher in relation to people who were really bad. So I was probably like all right or half decent compared to like some awful teachers. Not that everyone was bad. Hey, some people were really good. Some people had really successful classes, but like pedagogically, when you look at it now, if I look at it now with my PhD head on, it was a lot of it was really bad. Um, that I actually came out of that in a strong position because knowing how to conduct a lesson and knowing how to do certain things kind of fed back to you literally through feedback that students would give you, and then the school or the institution would be happier with your performance because the students liked your classes, and therefore that was good in terms of keeping your job, moving up in the company, being recognized, or being recognized in a positive way. So there was a really good knock-on effect of that. What I thought was a negative in terms of some of these skills is that it comes across a little bit like when you're doing a certificate that maybe this is the only way to teach. This was in my experience, and it's helpful, but it can only take you so far. So when I went into practice, first of all, it really helped me. But then the more that you develop, especially if you're like a thinker like me who wants to kind of innovate and try different things, then the certificate is just giving you the basics for that. And there's actually like a whole ton of different ways that you can teach the English language, as you know if you watch our channel. If you don't, you should subscribe. Let's talk a little bit then about knowledge. So what kind of knowledge does a certificate give you, and is that knowledge worth it? So at the time it feels like it gives you a lot. So there's going to be something like, I'm sure I wrote this down somewhere, like 120, 130 hours of contact time. So in that you'll get kind of like input sessions about a listening, a speaking, a writing, a kind of these kind of lessons. But when I did it anyway, they didn't teach you anything about grammar, and I actually knew nothing about grammar when I started. Don't tell anybody, it's a secret. And I had to learn on the job while I was doing it, which was quite stressful actually. But that really taught me a couple of things. So that taught me that standing up in front of the class and being the source of knowledge is a really bad idea when you don't know what you're talking about. So therefore, you should give as much work as possible to the students. Yeah, and at the beginning, I didn't know about grammar at all. Not even things like present, continuous, or progressive. Like really basic stuff I didn't know. So, but I learned it on the job, and I became expert in that. But so my knowledge changed through my practice and my experience, but I never changed the part of the practice where I got the students to do all the work. So my lessons have always been really student-centered, and I think some of it actually started from that point. When you're doing a certificate, it can actually feel like quite overwhelming if you're new to teaching, especially. So some people will do it at different times. So perhaps you've done a master's and you want to go back and do a certificate as a practical, like, professional qualification, and that means that you're going to have a really good knowledge of teaching, and then you can kind of apply it in the certificate. So it might be easier for you. If you're going fresh into it, it's going to seem like quite a lot. At the end of the day, the stuff that you get in a teaching certificate is really basic, because there's not time to delve into more. TESOL's got applied linguistics, it's got education, it's got sociolinguistics in it. It's got tons of different facets which are super interesting. So there's only so much that can be covered in a certificate, and that is always just going to be the basics. I think the kind of the real negatives that I experienced on this kind of course were that it really depends on the tutor that you have and the curriculum design. As far as I know, the CELTA is a little bit more rigid than the CertTESOL is. I've actually been a teacher trainer on CertTESOL, and when I got to that stage of doing that, it was much more flexible, and the actual institution or the school could have more input. So it might depend on the philosophy of the school or who's working in the school. But when you do any qualification, things always depend on the teacher, and think back to your own experience of, I don't know, going to school. You remember the good teachers, and I guess you remember the bad ones as well because they were awful, but you really remember the good ones. So I think that I'm going to talk about that in a second. This is what happens with me. This is why I don't like a lesson plan very much, because I quite often go off on a tangent. So it might depend on who you get, is my point, and depends on like the beliefs and the attitudes, the opinions of the people that you've got there. I guess in my experience, I came out of the teaching cert thinking that there's kind of like one way to teach, and this is how you do it, and you shouldn't stray from that, when that's not the case. And also at the time, and I would hope it's changed now, but I guess it's maybe not, is that it was very native speaker driven. So if you want to know more about that, you can put something into the comments. Right, let's move on and talk about experience. So I'm going to talk about experience in two ways. I'm going to talk about the experience of doing it and the experience that you get from it. So first of all, the experience of doing it. So comes back to the tutor that you have. And my experience actually was kind of in two parts. The first part, I had the tutor who was really nice, and I really liked that tutor, and I felt quite like a safe environment to do it. The second half of it, I had a different tutor, and that was I felt like that tutor just didn't like me, and it was quite stressful actually. I had a lot of quite harsh critiques on my of my lessons, which I'm sure weren't really very good because I'm a trainee doing a certificate. Like, you can't expect it to be that good. But that was quite unpleasant at times, actually, to be honest, and I found it quite stressful. And this is where this can have quite a big impact on if you're doing some kind of certification, that you need to plan lessons, but you need to plan those lessons outside of class. So you might do it in the evening. So that kind of stress from that situation had quite a knock-on effect for me. I would spend ages trying to plan my lessons because I was worried about the critiques I was going to get. And yeah, that took me a lot of time. So that made that I put a lot of extra time into those lessons, which were kind of a bit rubbish at the end of the day. And I can remember that tutor getting angry with me and lots of stuff. So it was like a really bad experience. I was so happy when it was finished. Like, it did teach me some stuff. It taught me, and I've taken this through the rest of my 20-year career until today. And I decided that I would never pass on that experience to anybody else, that I would never knowingly be like that in the classroom. And hey, we all have bad days in the classroom, and sometimes we say things that we don't mean, or we lose our temper, or something can happen because we're humans. Yeah, sometimes students forget that teachers are actually humans. Yeah, we have emotions, we have good days, we have bad days as well, and we have to be very measured. We're not robotic. Yeah, we need to just try to be measured in the classroom as much as we can. So that kind of taught me that I'm never going to do that to another person. And when I became a trainer, I have almost always been very understanding and trying to think the best of the trainee. And a couple of times I haven't. I've probably been pulled up on it by the student, which is what I should have done at the time rather than just accepting that. But hey, it's down to the individual personalities and the confidence that you have at the time. So what experience do you get from it, or what experience did I get from it? I got the standard stuff that you're going to get. So I would have got like 120 hours of contact time. I went on observed classes, which is really, really useful to see other teachers in action. And I think I did about like 6 hours of that. I also, and this is the most important point, was observed teaching for 6 hours. Now, that feels like a lifetime when you're doing a cert. It feels like a lot of time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. Like when I worked in Korea, I think I worked like 8 hours of actual teaching a day. Having someone observe you teaching, give you feedback, and you can reflect, and they can give you feedback, and you try and respond to it, is the most important thing of a certificate. That's what really makes a certificate a certificate. Otherwise, you could just do most of it like online, or you could do most of it like on that asynchronously. So this is something that really matters. The workload and the planning depends on some of the stuff I talked about earlier, but you're always going to do quite a lot of work on a cert, especially if it's intensive. But at the end of the day, you're really certified after 6 hours of teaching, which is kind of weird. But I guess that 6 hours is staggered over a month. But I kind of, yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? And it's great that you can get qualified in that time. and it does have a lot of benefits and you do take a lot from it. But also it's a total incubator for imposter syndrome. Like, when do you become a real teacher? Is it after that, or it's kind of like a belief? It's kind of when you believe that you're a proper or a real teacher. So there is something kind of weird about that, but hey, that is what it is. To get certified, you only have to teach 6 hours. When you're doing it, it does feel like a lot more than that, especially if you've never taught before. If someone asks you to do like a 15-minute class, you'd be like, oh my God, that's ages. But in the grand scheme of things, that's really short. Let's think finally then about recognition. This is a really important one. And this is really, if we bring all that other stuff together, this is where you have to really think about whether or not it's worth it to do this kind of qualification. So, how you need to determine how a certificate, such as a CertTESOL or a CELTA, is recognized within the jobs market that you want to go into. And this is going to depend on the place you want to work, the level at which you want to work, whether it's like an institution or whether it's a school. And also it's also about timing as well. So at the moment we live in a time where there is a lot of there's quite a narrowed job market in my experience anyway. So from in my opinion, so these things are going to play a factor. So for instance, if you what I always do is when I'm going to look for if I'm thinking about a new job or thinking about a new position, what I've always done is to have a look at job ads that I maybe would like to do, and have a look and see what they're asking for. Are they asking for a degree? Are they asking for a cert? Are they asking for a master's? Are they what are they asking for? What experience are they asking for? Like this kind of thing. And then I would, if that's a job that I want, then I would try and get the things that I need to get that job. So if they're asking for things which are essential, then you absolutely have to get them. So if they're asking for a certificate, such as a CELTA or a CertTESOL, in their essentials, and you want that job or a job like it, you absolutely have to get it. So that's a done deal. Otherwise, you forget it. If you apply for a job and you haven't got the essentials, to my knowledge, they won't even look at your application at all. So I would suggest having a look at that first of all. Then they might also have desirables. Now, a desirable is like maybe I need this, maybe I don't. And this is when it comes back to the job market at the time which you're applying. So if you've got all the essentials and you apply for a job, hopefully you'll get an interview. However, if there's desirables in there and other applicants have desirables and you don't, then it's likely that you're not going to get selected as a candidate for interview. So therefore, you need to make sure, if you want to be more competitive in the job market, and the CELTA or some kind of CertTESOL is in the desirables, then it would be a good idea for you to go and get that if you want to be more competitive. So it might be that you're going into a job market where there are tons of positions and there's hardly any teachers. Who cares? You don't need to get the desirables. However, if it's a tight job market where it's really competitive, it would make sense for you to go and get that to improve your chances of getting a position. So that's one really obvious reason to do it or not to do it. If they're not asking for a cert at all, so for instance, when I went to Korea, they asked for a degree, so I needed my degree certificate and transcripts, which they were really strict about. They rejected that quite a few times. And the first time I sent my degree there, the guy who took it to the immigration office left it on the bus, and it's lost. So it's somewhere supposedly in South Korea, in Seoul somewhere. Probably not still on the bus after 20 years, but maybe someone used it. I have got no idea what happened to that certificate. So because it's a legal document, I actually had to go to a lawyer and you get a new one certified. But yeah, hey, that's another story for another time. So at the time, it didn't make a difference, I don't think, whether or not I had one technically for getting the job. It wasn't in the job description. It wasn't a requirement. They were really looking for a lot of teachers. So that was quite an easy in for me. There, I guess, there are two options. If you don't want to do it, you don't think you need it, don't do it. And who cares? Yeah? And just move on with your practice. If you feel like you want to upskill, because ultimately that's what a cert can do for you, then it's worth doing it for the reasons I mentioned earlier, which were the kind of the washback from that, which is that your classes will most likely be better, that you will be more comfortable in your role, you will have better outcomes. Your students will be happy with your classes and you'll get validation from them. The company that you're working for or the institution you're working for will be happy with your classes and you'll get validation from them. So there are reasons for doing it in that case. But remember, all of this is simply like from my experience of doing a cert, teaching on it, and then being involved in TESOL for the last couple of decades. But you have to make your own decisions and your own choices about what you want to do. It's not down to me at the end, it's down to you and what you think. So I would maybe think about the end result of where you want to get to before you choose to do any qualification, and make an assessment whether you think it's worth it or not. Okay, thank you for listening to this episode, and if you haven't subscribed to TESOL with Micky and Ida, please do so. Actually, most of our viewers are not subscribed, and as you know, guys, the currency on this platform is like likes and subscriptions. So please hit the subscribe button and the like button, and check out our other videos. I'll see you next time.